Greetings, fellow slaves. I am Patrick Smith. Welcome to Disenthrall. Today, we're going to be having a very special episode in which we try out... Well, we'll save it. We have a special guest on the show today. His name is Ethics. Welcome to the show, Ethics. How are you?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
I mean,
I'm ready.
I've never interviewed a frog in my life, so... This is quite a privilege, sir. Quite a privilege. This is Ethics. He has been a cop and court watcher for over 4 years. He's mainly known from a YouTube channel called Ethics Instead. He also has a channel called A Frontal Cortex. He's been helping people around the globe learn how to effectively challenge authority, avoid arrest, and get nonviolent, victimless criminal charges dismissed. He has a unique way of doing all of this and wants to share it with us today. So welcome, Mr. Frog Ethics, sir. Welcome to the stream. Tallytail, thank you for the subscription. How are you today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. I know we've been wanting to do this for a while. It's good to finally get around to it.
Like a year. Well, I've been wanting to do this for probably, yeah, right. I think I probably asked you about it for a year. And, you know, I've just been kind of following and watching, and I'm wearing my slave costume today. This is what I wear to, you know, all functions in which I am, my presence is demanded by my master, you know, my owner and master, the government. So I thought it would be appropriate for our discussion here today.
Nothing's better than mockery. That works.
Well, yeah, I know. I want the master to know that I recognize my rightful position as his owned property. So, the show today is about what I've been calling the jurisdiction Gambit. Now, I don't know. That's not an official name. That's just what I've been calling it. Well, why don't you describe what it is? What is this thing that we're going to roleplay today?
Well, it's a way to go into courtrooms during the first hearing after receiving some kind of a ticket or a charge, most usually for some non-violent, victimless, quote-unquote crime. And what it does is it uses very basic and easy to understand logic and very simple. Nice.
Hey, Tabby, thank you for subscribing. Please continue.
Yeah, very simple and non-controversial level ethics to embarrass the judge and prosecutor in front of the public, like in the peanut gallery there watching, as well as anyone online that you want to expose your hearing to via some audio recording. So I know that, you know, a lot of people go in with a lot of different ways into courts to deal with, you know, the legalized domestic terrorism. I'm sorry, that's my phrase. That's how I put it. Extortion, mainly. But what kind of sets us apart is, well, it's only been around for years. All right, a lot of these other methods have been around for decades, and they still kind of haven't obviously produced the level of effectiveness and results that we'd like. But B, it doesn't. This is the biggest shocking thing. It doesn't actually rely on making our own claims. It relies on maintaining a burden of proof on the prosecution. After all, it is called a burden for a reason. And when we don't, because we don't, what they're doing is such BS. It's so easily exposed that it simply is enough to convince even statist favoring sheep type people that the government is obviously being nothing more than a might makes right hypocritical bully, and no one likes a bully. And so it relies upon, you know, the same power that governments rely upon everywhere is public favor. Everyone knows that ultimately the power is with the public because they're the masses and the government is relatively smaller anywhere you go. And so by gaining public favor and getting them to realize, you know, pull back the curtain a little bit, show them the illusion, the wizard, so to speak, then they start to turn wheels in their head that maybe they've never turned before, going, wait, what's going on here? Meanwhile, we're being respectful and polite and cordial and not giving the court any reason whatsoever to, you know, troll us into any kind of anger. You know, if you're confident and respectful, the people that you're trying to appeal to, these public watching, are even more convinced by that. So it's several factors. I just listed a few of them for you there as an intro.
Yeah. So my background with, when I say this stuff, I'm not talking about this specific thing. I'm talking about the seemingly large group of people that all have these different methods by which you can utter some magic spells at a judge in a court. And those spells will float through the air, and they'll grab that judge's mind and that judge's hands and force him to free you by the power of the Constitution and the founding fathers of the country. You know, like, you know, at some point you realize that like these people don't actually give a shit. Like they have a job. They go to work every day. Their job is to, you know, enforce the law, which is the ultimate authority in their mind, and almost nothing you can say will, like, sort of force them to act in a certain way. And the distinction is not that the distinction with this jurisdiction, Gambit, at least for me when I first encountered it, was that it doesn't claim to try and do that stuff. It doesn't, like, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't seem to take itself seriously in that way, as if these are, you know, like there's a built-in expectation of these words forcing a change on the courtroom and the judge. It's just, look, here's some tools that might work sometimes, but realize the reality of your situation, that, you know, you are under their guns are pointed at you, and no matter what you do, you may get out, you may not. Here's some interesting words that might be some good activism along the way. It'll expose, you know, the people in the courtroom to it. It'll challenge the judge in a way that he's probably never been challenged before. And, you know, sometimes it does work. I think I've talked to 3 people directly one-on-one before I kind of decided to have this show with you, just to verify that it has worked for somebody before I kind of showed it to my audience. I'm sure it's worked for more than that. But, like, I want to make sure that we're keeping it real, keeping it real. So, like, sure. I want to make sure that we're not saying, look, we're handing you a golden ticket to take back your sovereignty from the government. Like,
oh, yeah, that's a great point. Let me address that really quickly. So,
sure.
Anytime, obviously, you know, speak truth to power and challenge the authority of a very egotistical judge, that's a dangerous situation.
Hey, nice. Jim Jesus, thanks for the donation.
On your tax returns. Flag fringes.
Oh, is that
Jim Jesus?
Is that the same? That's the same guy you talked to, what, yesterday or last night? Or,
yeah, for 4 hours. He hasn't had enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple points there. So yeah, I was saying, everybody's intimidated in court, more or less, and it can be a dangerous place because a judge has the power to just, for no reason whatsoever, I've seen this in person and in many recordings, just go, deputy, take him into custody. I'm, you know, holding you in contempt of court, blah, 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 blah. And judges can actually keep you there indefinitely without bail. So it's an intimidating place, which is why I don't suggest, it's not my position that, hey, if you're a real man, or if you're a real, you know, patriot, or whatever word you like, you need to go into court at the next opportunity you get and poke the bear. I'm not suggesting that at all, because A, it's dangerous. B, not very many people are actually motivated to do it when you can just pay a $150 speeding ticket and go on with your life with a, you know, plea deal from a misdemeanor or whatever. And then C, of those who do try, have the lifestyle where they can go to, you know, maybe half a dozen hearings every 6 weeks or whatever. Actually, a small percentage of them are actually able to be effective enough. So, I mean, obviously it's one thing to know the material, but when go time comes, can you perform in front of a judge when the actual pressure, you know, when everything's on the line? And not everybody can do that. What I really want to get across, my primary message is that even if you don't go in and do it, the point is that you know how to do it. To me, this is the most powerful and valuable skill I have and have ever known in my entire life.
Larry Bernard, thanks for the $2.
Spell is talking about admiralty law.
What level spell is talking about admiralty law?
It's admiralty law, and that has to do with traditionally over the open oceans, and that's why, like, captains are in charge of the ship, and that's kind of a different. That's a component of ancient forms of law. Now, this steps outside of that steps outside of common law and natural law. It doesn't deny that. It simply wants to use the power of public pressure and therefore political pressure to bend the court's will to yours instead of you bending your will to theirs. What was I wrapping up on there? Oh, knowing how to do this, even if you never go in and use it. If you know how to verbally defend yourself against an American judge in an American courtroom, all other situations you may find yourself in life are a piece of cake by comparison. Whether it's a family member or a coworker or someone in your little group or community or someone you want to debate for whatever reason. If you know how to defend yourself against the judge, and primarily we use the Socratic method of investigation, which is just another like the scientific method of investigation. It just uses clarifying questions instead of hypothesis and experiments. But it's all a search for the truth, for logical and ethical consistency. So yeah, that's the point, is to just know how to do it. I'm not saying everybody needs to go in there and put themselves at risk. And then secondly, to address your other point, yes, there are, and I've talked to all of them at some point, many of these. A lot of people go in there and I do want to do the Constitution and the natural law and common law, and I'm a sovereign citizen, and where's your, bond, judge? And there's a variety of things out there. Now, sometimes those things do work, but the person that is using it, when it works for them, and for whatever reason the case gets dismissed, they instantly, through confirmation bias, interpret that as, I must have the winning lottery ticket because just worked for me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what they're actually drawing upon is the same source that I'm talking about right now, which is they just happen to be able to get and garner enough public pressure on that judge.
How do I get the government to pay my debts?
Good luck.
Thanks, Larry, for the $2.
Yeah. If you find out, let me know. Yeah, it gets that judge or judges to dismiss the charges. They're actually just doing that because the charges are probably so small, and this guy is probably being effective in convincing more and more and more people that he's right instead of the government, especially when the internet came out. Hallelujah. And we can, have a bigger mass audience to expose their kind of, nonsense with. So I would just suggest that if they're making claims and they're saying that a magic voodoo spell of like a recipe of words will save you, that is not true. It has saved one person here and there, but it's because of public pressure. And the way I come about it is it focuses on the use of public pressure, and again, does it in the most simple form possible through very basic logic and ethics. It's like 5 questions, 6 questions, and bam, you're off and running. So
what I liked about it was that, like, what I do in my activism every day for years now is try and show people, to illustrate people, the truth that these chains are not sitting lightly. I'm used to wearing these for short bursts. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it through the whole show, but I'm going to try. So, like, what I do is try and show people the fact that this... Larry Bernard, are we speaking
to the person or the agent now?
Oh no.
Oh no. So, we're speaking to my straw man. So no, what I was saying was so like this is what I do is I try and illustrate for people that the government doesn't govern through the consent of the governed, like you've been indoctrinated since birth. And so, right. I'm talking about all these different philosophical ideas, and I'm making these arguments about, the consent of the governed and the just powers flowing from your consent, and, you consent by living here, blah, blah, blah. And this is the debate I'm usually in. And then I hear this Gambit, and what it does is kind of what I do in general to normies that I meet through life, except it does it in the courtroom. Yeah. It says, oh, wait. So, like, the consent of the governed, right? So you have jurisdiction over me, like, through my consent, right? Well, can somebody show proof of that? No?
Right.
Interesting.
Sure. The catchphrase I like a lot of times there to use is, upon what factual evidence do you rely to form that conclusion? Because it immediately draws them away from an opinion. People think their opinions are facts a lot of times. So
Yeah, so like if the government derived its just powers from the consent of the governed, they would have proof of jurisdiction that you've probably signed at some point in your life. You know what I mean? And so this just kind of illustrates that from another angle. It illustrates what I'm trying to wake people up to from another angle. Like, if the government functioned as you were indoctrinated that it did, then what we're saying right now would actually work every time. It would be that magic spell that pulled the lever that set you free when somebody didn't have jurisdiction over you. Yeah. The fact that it doesn't work every time, all the time, everywhere, illustrates the actual point, which is that you know. Yeah, right. Okay, Larry.
I mean, was the Constitution even passed legally? Isn't the Articles of Confederation still in effect?
Man, I could address each one of these comments. Maybe we'll have to take some time later. Are they listed up somewhere where you can get back to them?
I got a list. We'll get to them. We can get to them maybe later.
Believe me, I've got answers for any and all of those, and they do use the kind of basic logic and ethics I'm talking about, so that would be cool. But
Spooner made the case that like the largest percent of the population that could have consented to the Constitution at the time it was signed was like 10%. At most. That's the most people that could have, like, women couldn't vote, people that didn't own land couldn't vote. You know, there are all sorts of people that had no say. So how can you say anyway, we're digressing. So the point of the show today is role play. I would hope that ethics here will play the judge for us, and I will play the slave, and I will attempt to use what I've learned with the jurisdiction gambit to kind of illustrate for you guys how this works. And ethics will correct me when and where I go wrong, and I'm sure that this will turn into a great discussion. So, are you down with that, ethics?
Yeah, I'm down with that. Do you want to mention the few clarifications ahead of time and then go into a role play? Because I don't know, if we just go into the role play, they're going to hear you ask one question and the next one and the next one, but maybe not have an idea of how it all ties together, because they're all interdependent.
Well, you know what? You teach this stuff, so however you think people will learn most from this is how we should do it.
So yeah, because it doesn't take very long. It doesn't take very long, and it makes it so clear. Okay. Even to people who disagree right now, it makes it so clear. Now, before I begin, there's one thing I wanted to mention, and that is a lot of people who object to this basically say, your jurisdictional challenge is nonsensical. It's so blatantly obvious that we have jurisdiction that to challenge it makes no sense at all, and we do because, the Constitution or statutes and codes, and whether or not you agree with it, this is life, and you're just living in your own fantasy, and that's not how it goes down. My response to that is, the government does agree with me that jurisdiction is important and relevant and matters and should be legitimized and just. After all, they are claiming to have a legit legal system and equality under the law and real justice and things like this. So obviously what goes hand in hand with daddy government? Daddy's military. And in daddy's military, they have their own separate justice system, the UCMJ. And if you were to go into that UCMJ and say, hey, does the prosecution provide any factual evidence regarding this element of jurisdiction? They jump up and say, yes, absolutely. Here is the documents that you signed upon entry to military service that you agreed. You gave your consent willingly ahead of time that you will comport to these rules under the UCMJ. And if you break them, you'll be punished as such. Also, international courts, war crimes, crimes against humanity, address jurisdiction. So to just brush off jurisdiction as if it doesn't even matter, you're totally ignoring the fact that the government hypocritically does validate it itself if you're coming from the government's position. So just wanted to throw that out there first real quick about that.
Yeah.
Now going into the role play here. So there's a basic formula of clarifications, and there's, like I said, 5 or 6. Now this has been developed over several years, but there's definitely a base safe, 5 or 6 that I'd like to have people memorize before they come to me wanting to role play. Now I've added kind of my own at the front, and it is a simple question of, hey, judge, good morning, whatever you want to do. I hate to say judge and be nice to them, but it's how you get the sheep to go along with you. Oh, he's Mr. Respectful. He's cool. How am I able to gather a recording of today's proceedings? Is it audio? Is it video? Is it a transcript? How do I get a recording of these events? And the reason why I start with that is because I want to introduce the idea to his or her head that I want the recording, and there must be a reason, but I'm not going to give you the reason. But instantly their initial interpretation instinctively is, uh-oh, this guy might want to hold me accountable for my actions, or it is possible that I'll be held accountable for my actions. Great. Now, it automatically lets them know that this is not one of those scenarios where you can just do and say whatever the heck you want, because that's so common with everyone else. You immediately put it on notice that I'm not one of those people. And it's a very simple and polite question. He may have a recording, he may not. I won't go into too much detail, but let's begin. So the first one would be, am I presumed innocent? Now, who listening to this now or in the future would disagree that people should not be presumed innocent, right? That's how obvious that is. Am I presumed innocent? And by the way, all these clarifications are based on, catch-22 questions. They're all trappy. Not only are they linked together, as you'll see, but they are basically, they're screwed if they answer yes, and they're screwed if they answer no, and they're screwed if they don't answer yes or no, because all of these require a simple yes or no. Now, let me set it up with one other statement, because people are like, well, you just walk into a courtroom and start with that? Not necessarily. We have this tactic that makes it even nicer. Hey, good morning, Judge. Are these proceedings going to be recorded? Okay, figure that out. And he'll go, Mr. So-and-so, state name for the record. These are the charges X, Y, and Z, .223. The maximum punishment is, 30 days in jail or $500 fine or whatever it is. How do you plea? Because they call this an arraignment. An arraignment is to get the plea settled and the lawyer issue settled. So they start with the plea issue. How do you plea? And our intro is something that's super casual. Well, Judge, I fully intend to plead guilty here today and pay the fine and leave. In fact, I have all the documentation I need to do so, except maybe one or two pieces of information. And that's what I've come here to collect, and I'm going to plead guilty and pay and leave. Okay, that's great. Now, it's really for the prosecutor, but before I begin, just to make sure, am I presumed innocent of these charges here today? And of course he's going to say yes, because it's such a softball pitch. I've never heard a judge say no to that, right? So you're automatically starting off with a yes. Okay, great. And I won't go into detail about why a fair and meaningful hearing is so important, but believe me, it's got a ton of precedent, and no judge is going to deny that. Next one was, do I have a right to be informed of the cause and nature of the charges and proceedings here today? Now that's straight up out of the Bill of Rights. I believe it's the 4th Amendment, to be informed of the cause and nature of the charges and allegations or proceedings against you, something like that. And so because that's right out of the Bill of Rights, and they supposedly have given some oath to protect and defend the Constitution, then that's another softball question, okay? Now that there's so much information in there, do I have the right to be informed of the cause? That's everything that's previously happened to the present moment, and nature, that is everything that's happening right now, of the... Sweet, man.
I mean, what is the Code Napoleon in Louisiana?
I love to see your channel get supported like this, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.
Of the cause and nature of the charges, that's all the documentation and evidence that's been compiled by the prosecutor and submitted as a case to prosecute to the court. And proceedings, which is what this is right now, this meeting, this arraignment. So do I have a right to be informed of the cause and nature, the past and present, of what caused this, of all the evidence, and the nature of this proceeding? You're going to get a yes there. Okay. I started with the presumed innocent, didn't I? I should have started with the fair and meaningful hearing. Did I dork that up?
You did. No, you got it.
I dorked it up.
Did.
So it's fair and meaningful hearing, then to be informed of the cause and nature. And then the third one is, am I presumed innocent? And these are all softballs. You're still getting yes, yes, yes. Okay. Am I presumed innocent of every element? Now, this is the first one where strangers to this don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Element is a legally defined term that means necessary ingredient, without which everything else falls apart. So a friend gave me a great analogy. Imagine you have a room with a light and you want to turn the light on, and there are 6 light switches. In order for the light to turn on and for this all to be legit and just, all switches have to be in the up position. So an element is one of those switches. If only 5 switches are up, light's not on. All 6 have to be up. So jurisdiction is an element. What's another element? Well, it's supposed to be like, oh, I don't know, call me crazy, but an actual victim. Shock and horror. Another call me crazy would be a criminal intent, right? They want to be able to address and prove criminal intent. An act that caused harm, like a verb, like an allegation. So these are all elements, and jurisdiction is one of them. So am I presumed innocent of every element? Now, this is where a judge is going to start messing with you most likely because they've never heard anybody say this to them so far. It's highly unlikely. Okay, but you're eventually, if you know, push comes to shove, you can get a yes there because it really is a simple yes. And then, is jurisdiction one of the elements? So follow with me here. Am I presumed innocent? Am I presumed innocent of every element? Is jurisdiction one of the elements? Now, most judges that I've come across have given a yes all the way through here. So the court's just admitted that you're presumed innocent of the court's claims of jurisdiction. Okay? Now here's the key, second to last. It's kind of the key crux, most important clarification. If you only get out one clarification, this should be it. So the logic is, I've been presumed innocent of jurisdiction, so here's my next clarification of the court's claims. Has the prosecution provided any factual evidence regarding jurisdiction as of yet, yes or no? And the judge is going to go flying off into, well, we don't have to prove that right now, or that's a matter for trial, or here's the jurisdiction, and this is the jurisdiction. No, that's the jurisdiction. You're going to get a bunch of excuses right there. And the reason why is because that's the bullseye target clarification that undoes their entire illusion and their entire system and shows that this is all illegitimate, just domestic terrorism, extortion, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we want to focus on one fact and not get sidetracked with other tempting carrots. The most important fact is, I'm not here. Look, for all I know, Judge, maybe you do have jurisdiction. I'm simply investigating. I'm clarifying. I'm not trying to determine what's on this document to whether it's valid or not. I'm not trying to prove anybody has jurisdiction or not. My goal, the only thing I'm missing before I can plead guilty, pay the fine, and be out of here, is to know whether or not documentation has passed, factual evidence has passed, something written down between the prosecution and the court regarding jurisdiction. So they're going to sidetrack, and we go, no, focus on, has a document passed, yes or no? That's it, not what the document is. Okay. And therein lies...
TLDR, I plead not guilty but with extra steps.
No, Larry, I don't think so.
Well, that's not quite it. We can get into why. Well, I'm super happy to address all those later because they're super common. All right, so therein lies the crux of the issue. Now, you're going to get a bunch of no's. If you were to get a yes, it's important to know that the very last step is, okay, then I motion to dismiss all charges until such a time as the prosecutor can file a proper case and presume that any unopposed motion will be granted. Thank you and have a nice day. And it's that simple. Now, of course, the recipe is that simple. But what actually happens is midway through, the judge starts...
Don't tell him. Let's show him.
Okay, let's show him.
Yeah, yeah. So those
Good
are
idea.
those are the seven. Like those are the 7 questions. That's really the core of it. And what we're about to show you is how it goes sideways and how to keep it on track, and either probably get it dismissed or get thrown in a cage. So here we go.
Okay, now there's a variety of ways to be a judge. The type of judge I'm going to be is just one who relies on just countering your points with what I consider justice, but I won't be interrupting you and I won't be threatening you. If someone aces that with me, then I'll move up to interrupting and starting to throw hiccups in your direction. And once they ace that, then I'll start being a judge that actually threatens contempt of court and stuff. And really, I've yelled at people before. Because obviously, the more realistic I can make it, the better they're going to do in a courtroom.
Are we going to go through? We're probably only going to go through this once, right, on stream.
Yeah.
Do you want to turn it up?
Yeah.
Turn it up for the first one.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do with you is I'll turn it up if you do well, and if you kind of struggle, I'll keep it chill. Is how I do it a lot too.
Sounds good.
So, okay,
all right, I'm ready when you are.
Pick your criminal charge. What do you want to be charged with?
My chains are ready. I ran I ran
criminal
Master's
charge?
stop sign. I don't care. Whatever you think works.
Okay, well, just might as well. It doesn't matter. So ran a stop sign is fine enough.
All right.
All right, case number 1234 XYZ, the state of blank versus Mr. X. Mr. X, I see that you've been charged with failure to come to a full stop at a stop sign. This is according to, Kansas codes, statutes 1234.6 subsection C, whatever the heck. The max penalty for this is $250 with 30 days in jail. This is your arraignment, sir. Do you have a lawyer, or do you need to hire a lawyer, or would you like a public defender, or are you representing yourself?
Judge, my intention is just to plead guilty here today. In fact, I've got an unsigned plea of guilty here in my hand. I simply just have a few clarifications about what the prosecution is alleging first. It should just take a few minutes of your time, starting with, do I have a right to a fair and meaningful hearing in this court?
I'm going to answer yes to your question, but I just want to touch back on my question, because right now you're acting as your own lawyer. Is that how you wish to proceed, as your own lawyer?
I'm not. I'm shopping for a lawyer. I don't need the court to appoint me one, but I don't know how to shop for a lawyer until I've been informed on the cause and nature of this hearing. I bet if you ask me again after I've had these clarifications, I'll have an answer for you. So do I have my next question is, do I have a right to be informed of the cause and nature of the charges and proceedings against me here today?
Yes, you do.
Oh, that's so good. That's great, Judge. Thank you. Am I presumed innocent?
Everyone who comes before my court is presumed innocent, yes.
I know. I just had to ask. So, but am I presumed innocent of every element?
Well, what do you mean by element?
Well, I would happily defer to your superior knowledge as a judge of the court to know, the legal definition of element over mine. So if anybody should be defining element, it would be you, Judge. Am I presumed innocent of every element?
See, you took good notes, because I just need your crowd to know that you're spitting out mad good answers. Most people don't.
That wasn't in my notes. I was just imagining.
Oh, you just remember that? Oh,
yeah.
Well, man, you got a killer memory, because that's an ideal way to answer that question. So, let's see. Nice judge. Maybe we should just go through it so everyone sees it goes through.
Am I presumed innocent of every element?
You're presumed innocent of the elements in regards to the applicability of the state of blank's charges against you.
I'm sorry, Judge. I'm a layman. If you could just tell me, there are many elements, I'm sure. Am I presumed innocent of all of them? Yeah, I already understand that I'm presumed innocent. I'm just clarifying that I am, in fact, presumed innocent of all of them. Is that true?
It depends on what exactly you're charged with. Some charges, yes, some charges, no. And this is why it's beneficial to have a lawyer. And that's why I'm going to ask you again as to whether or not you would like to have a lawyer, or would you like to represent yourself. And the reason why, sir, is because it's my job to protect your rights, whether or not you know what they are. And I sense that you might be getting into some murky legal waters, as you have just admitted you're a layperson and all. Are you sure you don't want to address the issue of, if you want to represent yourself, or if you'd like, I can schedule this hearing for 6 weeks from now, and then you'll have plenty of time to shop for the lawyer, and I'll even have Mr. Prosecutor Y over here hand you what documents they have regarding the criminal charges so that you can take them to your lawyer. Do you find that acceptable, sir?
Judge, I really appreciate you looking out for my rights. Without people like you, we'd be in a lot of trouble. So it's important to me, so I understand that maybe not all elements apply to all charges. So maybe you can tell me, is jurisdiction one of the elements that would apply in this case?
Yes.
And am I presumed innocent of jurisdiction?
Jurisdiction, in the way you're speaking, is addressed at trial. We're just here at arraignment. I'm just here to get look, you can have your day in court. If you want to address that at trial, that's fine. But in order to get to a trial, you'd have to enter a plea of not guilty. You can enter not guilty, guilty, or no contest. How would you like to plead?
Judge, please understand, I am not asking for any determination process whatsoever. I'm not here for a trial. I have an unsigned plea of guilty right here in my hand on this piece of paper, ready to go. I'm just gathering evidence. I'm making sure I understand the cause and nature of the proceedings against me here today, which you say I have a right to. So am I presumed innocent of jurisdiction?
Dude, you're doing well at this. You're doing well. We've only done this, 3 times or so? I mean, that's really good right there. You're transitioning right back. You're getting them to admit what they previously admitted. If I was, in Discord role playing with someone, they'd be, getting 5 stars here. Okay. You're saying that you want to plead guilty and pay the fine and leave, but you're asking questions that can only be resolved in a trial. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Which would you like, Mr. X?
Sir, again, I'm not asking for a determination on the evidence of jurisdiction. I'm asking if I'm presumed innocent of the element of jurisdiction in your court here today.
Assuming that you're going to be entering a plea in this arraignment, then yes, you're presumed innocent of the elements.
That is excellent to hear. So my last question, thank you for being so patient with me so far with all these, questions I'm sure you don't get often in your, as you go about your day protecting people's rights. Has the prosecution provided this court any factual evidence regarding this element of jurisdiction?
This is where the prosecutor jumps in. Judge, the prosecution has provided everything to the court required to prosecute a charge of failure to fully stop at a stop sign. I'm not sure exactly what the defendant is referring to. And then the judge chimes in with something like, I'm going to have to tend to agree with that, sir. If you'd like full documentation of everything the prosecutor has, as I've previously mentioned, I'm more than happy to have them do so. And we can schedule this for another time to where you can come in more prepared so we can address the matters in the most relevant, effective, and time-effective way possible.
I understand. Again, I appreciate you affording me the right to be informed of the cause and nature of the proceedings in this court. And for letting me know that I am presumed innocent, even of every element, including jurisdiction. I'm just asking if you could give me, if you could give me a copy of whatever evidence the prosecution has provided this court regarding the element of jurisdiction. I will sign this guilty plea and hand it to you, and I'll be done here today.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Mr. X. I mean, this is traffic court. You are here for a traffic violation. This is a moving violation. It says here that you weren't ticketed for failure to have a license. Do you have a driver's license?
I do.
Okay, so as someone who has a driver's license, I mean, I'm sure not everybody reads the fine print on the driver's license, but it is there, and in that, a document that you voluntarily signed, it is mentioned the fact that you will be held to the applicable traffic laws and codes and statutes of the state of blank. And now you're saying you're questioning whether or not that's applicable. Am I understanding you right?
So you're saying that my driver's license is the proof of the element of jurisdiction that I'm asking for?
I'm saying it's one form.
So if I didn't
and
have
it's a form that,
so if I didn't have a driver's license, you would have no jurisdiction here in this proceedings today?
no, you would still be held in violation of our traffic rules because you are required to have a driver's license to protect the public interest so that we have qualified and safe drivers on the road.
Okay, so if it's not necessary for your jurisdiction, then could you please let me know how it, if I don't have one and you still have jurisdiction, what good does that do anybody?
Okay, the prosecutor is going to jump in here and rescue, quote unquote, the judge, because the judge is getting pinned down with your most excellent clarifications of the bullshit I'm slinging.
Yeah.
So, Judge, we do have the driver's license and the registration and the insurance card on file. Mr. X seemed to have all the required documentation. I'm not sure why I've never heard this type of language from a defendant or defense from a defendant before. We'd be in favor. We'd like to motion to resume these proceedings in 6 to 8 weeks, whatever is convenient for the court, so that as you've suggested, we can provide Mr. X with the documentation he's looking for so he can hire appropriate counsel. We can address all these matters at a later time.
Judge, I was told at the beginning that I had a right to a fair and meaningful trial here today in this court. I would like to make progress on this case. If at all possible, I would really appreciate an answer.
I fail to see how the prosecutor's suggestion does not make progress on this case. Seems very reasonable to me.
I'm just asking to find out if he has submitted evidence to the court regarding this element of jurisdiction. My question is really to him. It has nothing to do with you, Judge. Has he done his job and provided you evidence regarding the element of jurisdiction today?
Judge, I've provided everything required of the prosecution to file a proper case here today in these matters. I'll say it again.
Judge, so if I could just get a copy of the evidence that he specifically submitted regarding the element of jurisdiction, I'll sign this guilty plea and we'll be done.
Okay. Tell you what, I'm going to take a recess and I'm going to have I'm going to order the prosecution to make copies of everything in their manila folder of the records they have against you. And I don't know, how long do you think that'll take, prosecutor? About half hour to 45 minutes, Judge. I can have an assistant here do it, no problem. Okay, great. We're going to go on recess until then. Let me get a few more of these cases knocked out, and then I'll call you back to the stand, and we'll go from there.
Thank you for your diligence, Judge.
All right, next case. So I'm cool with you allowing that break to go through because you're still going to be able to burn them when you come back. And it's kind of, for you to fight at that point, right now, you've got a great image with the public watching. I mean, a lot of people would go, oh, no, he's kissing their butt. He's kissing their butt. Dude, it's not kissing their butt if you're kicking their butt, right? And they know it and you know it, but the public doesn't know it, but they're coming on to it because you're giving them no chance whatsoever to be threatening or intimidating or, oh, one more word out of you and I'm going to throw you in jail. Like, you've been so nice and everything. The public wouldn't like that at all. And they, believe me, they know this. They're aware of this. So I really like that about it. I mean, I kind of threw a bunch more hurdles in your way because obviously you were doing very, very well. I'm trying to also make it realistic. The judge isn't going to just let you coast through, right? Yeah. I mean, he's going to fight you right there on if that document has been provided big time.
Right. Yeah.
But if eventually you get through
that's the crux of the whole issue. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course. But again, if you do get through that, then it's one thing left. Just motion for all charges to be dismissed till such time as filed proper case, and presume any unopposed motion will be granted. Thank you. Have a nice day. And that's pretty much the gist of it. Now, see, I call this role-playing game. It's a lot like poker. There's a saying about Texas Hold'em: it takes 5 minutes to learn, but a lifetime to master. Mm-hmm. So you can learn the script here and kind of get some basics down, but it takes a bit more time to, like what we're doing. You practice, and so you learn. It's like having a quiver, and every very effective response, and you had many of them, you have is like having an additional arrow in your quiver. Right. And so like they fire something at you, you're able to fire something right back in a way that says, not only was that a completely ineffective arrow you tossed my way, but my arrow that came back at you was so powerful that you're thinking, man, I better not do that again. Because he just embarrassed me with my own nonsense. And you do that 3 times in a row. That's kind of when things happen, like, we're done here. Unplanned recess, bang, and they run off the bench. But I guarantee you, in the instance that we just had, like, that judge isn't just waiting for the prosecutor. They're going back there, and you're not going to get the presiding head honcho circuit level judge. You're going to get some district level peon traffic court judge. They're going to go back in their office and make phone calls, be like, oh, I got this going on. What should I do, to their superiors or whatever. So just a little behind the scene type stuff, but that's in essence it, man. I mean, but I just want your viewers to know that you did a lot better than the average beginner. And that's totally fine for the average beginner to come in and not do very well at all. Yeah. Because there are a few standard canned responses like, well, you have a driver's license, don't you? Well, if I didn't have a driver's license, would this court presume to still have jurisdiction over me? You know, just like you used. Just little things like that. So
yeah, and I have 2 pages of notes that I've collected over the past year that I've been looking into this. Like, you know, when people bring me these systems, like we talked about in the beginning, you know, at first I'm very skeptical, and I'll give it a little bit of attention just to see where it goes, and you know, I'll continue down a line of thinking until I find the problem. And in this case, because it doesn't take itself seriously, kind of like what we talked about in the beginning, like we know going in that, you know, at the end of the day, you're either going to get off, you're going to be thrown in a cage, or, you know, maybe you just pay the ticket and go about the rest of your life. You know, but this is illustrate, like, this would be great for making, like, YouTube content. Like, if you were recording your time in the courtroom, this would be fantastic to use to illustrate to people. It's like the other people in the court and to people that might watch the recording, you know, like this element of jurisdiction, which they themselves sort of admit that you're innocent of and is important. Well, they don't have that. Well, what does that mean for everybody else in the room? Like, what does that mean they don't have jurisdiction? What do you mean the government doesn't have jurisdiction?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and, you know, to any naysayers who are kind of like, well, that's not abracadabra words either. That doesn't work every time either. It's like, you're right, it doesn't. But it's like this. A sword is only as useful as the wielder. Right? And so people are at different skill levels and they have different lives. You know, maybe they have to take a plea deal. Maybe they can only do this for 3 months, but they can't any longer because they're missing too much work and it costs money and the ticket only costs $250. You know, there's a variety of reasons out there. There was something else I was going to mention too. It'll come to me. Go ahead. What else were you talking about?
Oh, no, that's fine. So, are we kind of done with the role play, or was there anything else that you think we needed to do with that to illustrate anything?
No,
points?
I mean, I think it was just fine, like perfect intro. I mean, if we came back from recess, it would just be more of the same. But I basically threw up 5 to 7 roadblocks in your way. You cleared them. I mean, all it is just using basic logic and, God forbid, ethics to expose to the public listening that this guy's being personally reasonable, rational, respectful, and I'm able to follow his words. He's not losing me in legal jargon and trying to sound impressive and all that. And yet, if the court does anything other than what they're supposed to, according to what they claim they're supposed to be doing, then they get this question mark in their head of, wait a minute, what is going on here? And I've never heard a guy come into court and believe, there's so many times I've turned around and you see everybody's eyes like pie-eyed, like my frog eyes right now, looking right back at you. Nobody's saying a word. They're like, he's not scared. He's not intimidated. What does he know that I don't? And why isn't the prosecutor saying a word at all? They just don't dare talk. Why is the judge getting pissed off? This guy's being nice. Why is the judge interrupting him? He won't even let him speak an English sentence to completion. And yet he just claimed he had a right to a fair hearing. That's not fair. What's going on here? I pay my taxes for this shit, right? And that's exactly the kind of message you want them to be thinking, and you want the judge to be thinking they're thinking, because then they go, how worth it is it to us to collect this $250 and get this guy to bend his knee to this stupid charge? Where we could just, I mean, they could have a prosecutor mail you an envelope 2 weeks later that says noli prosequi, all charges dismissed. Just, oh, it's not the court's fault. The prosecutor, in the interest of justice, determines we're not going to press charges anymore. So there's a million different ways to get around it. I remember the thing I was going to mention, but I forgot. So you mentioned, court recordings and everything. Yep. So in that channel you mentioned earlier, prefrontal cortex, that's my oldest one. I've had it for 4.5 years now. And when I was going through all my hearings, I had like 3 cases going on at the same time at one point. I did, in fact, record all of my recordings. Now, unfortunately, the quality isn't great because I'm having to hide a recorder on my person, and it's, sometimes in my pocket, and I was going through a learning process, but you can clearly make everything out. You mentioned, court record.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, no worries. And so if someone wants to listen to live court recordings, they can do that. There's also, I've got it down to playlists too, so you can search by playlist. And then there's also other people's recordings that we do commentary on. So like play the actual court hearing, pause, comment on what happened so everybody learns, play, pause, comment type of format. So that does exist if people are interested. I mean,
yeah. So guys, while we're chatting, if you have any questions for us or challenges or disagreements, now's the time. Drop them in chat. So just a couple things. We had one viewer say that his friend tried it, and the judge just basically tore him apart and just cock-blocked him hard.
Yeah. That's super common. That's the most common result. And the reason why is, unfortunately, okay, so of all the people I've had approach me, who found my channel and then found me on Discord and then approached me, probably 80% of them have a court date within a week. and they've known about it for 2 months. And because people don't really take action until the last minute because there's so much procrastination out there, that's just not enough time. So what I typically do is, hey, look, if you want to learn and do this seriously, you've got to commit to it, and I can buy you time. We're going to go into the first hearing. I'm going to tell you what to say so that you'll get an automatic extension. Almost all courts will give you one automatic extension when requested. That'll give you 6 to 8 weeks. Then we can hit it. And they have to memorize. All they have to do is memorize the script and practice role play. And because they'll make so many mistakes, and because that's the fastest way to learn, that's how they get on track the quickest, and then they can go in and do it. And then it's always, like I mentioned earlier, do they have the stones to pull it off under pressure? Because some don't. They've never been public speaking before. And oh, by the way, the courtroom is set up in a very manipulative fashion to maximize the pressure on that person in the podium. And they're in the middle. Their back is to all the strangers. They know they're in front of this person. The judge is on an elevated wooden throne. There's armed guards on each side, probably a series of clerks. This is all being recorded. It's over the microphone. Everybody's got to dress up. So there's a lot of reasons why that happens, but I wouldn't get discouraged just because somebody went in and dorked it up. I guarantee you they were not prepared. They're nervous. What's the number one factor that gets rid of nervous anxiety? Preparation.
Yeah, practice.
If you're prepared, you're confident. If you're confident, you're good.
Role plays like this help a lot, for sure.
Yeah.
And we can get you to a place. Yeah, you take time out of your life to, like, on his Discord server, guys. He takes time out of his life. Seems like once a week or so, he'll drop in voice chat and do these role plays with people. That's it's
busier. It's busier sometimes than others, but if anybody who comes in and is super dedicated, like if you're going, man, I got a court hearing in 2 days, it's like, okay, how much time and energy are you willing to invest in this? If you're like, I realize its value, I realize that I'll be able to apply it to every aspect of my life, not just the speeding ticket. I want to know how to use civil discourse and the Socratic method of investigation to stand on truth and be able to show through the other person's own words and claims that they're not being consistent and therefore not credible and shouldn't be followed. I see the value. I want to learn this. Anybody who comes to me like that, I will bend over backwards for free to get them on board. It's just that unfortunately it's kind of rare. Most people come in and they want the recipe. They want the confirmation bias that they don't live in an evil empire, that the Constitution is totally good, that daddy government does protect them, that every dollar they've given to taxes wasn't totally wasted and spent toward their own oppression. These are just a lot of complexities in people who actually want to resist. As you will know, most people don't want to resist. They just plead guilty, pay the fine, right?
Yeah,
they don't even go to trial.
Larry Bernard dropping truth bombs in chat. He says, I mean, you're a frog. Courts don't have jurisdiction over frogs. Case dismissed. So let's go through some of these comments and see if they trigger any thoughts on your end.
Yeah, cool.
Finian says, last time I went to court for a ticket, the judge didn't even show up. You couldn't even argue your case. They just declared we owed our ticket amount. Well, I mean, literally they do what they want.
I've heard of it. I've heard of it. I've heard of no judge and just a prosecutor. I've heard of no judge, no prosecutor, just the clerk. Yeah. I've heard of them trying to gain your acceptance of jurisdiction through a form they require you to sign before you can even step into the courtroom. And if you don't step into the courtroom, you can get a warrant for your arrest. There are all kinds of tricks of the trade. They're trying all over the
slave.
Checkmate. Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
what percentage?
Yeah.
What percentage of the pop?
Go ahead.
We're cutting each other. What percentage of the population takes the plea deal? It's like 97.
Yeah.
Right.
It reminds me of this court case where this chick was like, it was a custody battle, and the mom didn't want her kid vaccinated, and I guess the dad did or whatever. And so the court, rather than just order like the dad to have custody of the kid and get the kid vaccinated, rather than just ordering that to happen, the judge ordered the mom to sign a consent form to get vaccinated. It's like, wait. You're ordering her on pain of, contempt of court, jail, whatever, threat, to sign a consent form. Like, that's not how consent works.
See, that in and of itself, like a signature implies consent, voluntary consent. So to order somebody to do something voluntarily...
Yeah, you can't force somebody to sign like the contract is not valid if there's a gun pointed at your head, right? Anyway,
we're gonna have sex while I rape you,
and sign this consent form.
Yeah, right. One thing has consent and the other one doesn't. That's hilarious. All right.
Yeah, let's see. So, Gensory P says, so basically it's banking on a low fine being less valuable than the support of the public. Therefore, all that matters is if you come across respectable and likable to the jury.
Well, if it should come to the jury, I mean, that's a whole nother ball of wax, but to the public watching, I mean, look, when I go to court, I want to apply maximum pressure, right? And maximum pressure is applied through YouTube. So I always record in this, and I let them know. I mean, I've got a longer script with like 16 different clarifications. We just went over the short version, but where they know that I am going to get a recording of this, and most likely it's with the video and audio at some point in time for my own records, because I don't have a perfect memory and can't remember every word here, and for a lawyer should I decide to get one. But I want to make sure everybody's acting fully professional and accountable for their actions. You drop that in there and they know, oh, this is 1 in 10,000. Uh-oh, I better bring my A game with this person. And that you need to put them on notice right then and there. So it's not just the people behind you, although that does matter. It's them knowing, and even like the court's ordered me twice under threat of arrest. Do not record this. Do not put this on YouTube. And then later, the prosecutor opens a hearing with, Judge, I've seen this YouTube. This guy is recording this conversation and putting them on, and they don't do anything about it. It's just a bluff. They just didn't follow through. Because obviously, we should have the right to take an audio recorder of our own hearings for our own records and make that, and not have to rely on their recording, because A, they could have technical difficulties, and B, we all know it allows them to control the narrative. And that's how government has gone away with everything from the beginning of humanity.
And look, like at the end of the day, that's kind of the point we led with. I want to keep reminding people, like some of these other systems, it's like, well, you know, you say the magic spells, and, you know, then the judge basically threatens to put you in a cage if you don't just pay the ticket or plead not guilty or guilty or whatever. And then you're like, wait, but I said the magic words. It's like,
yeah. YouTube is full of those videos. Those videos are everywhere. But when you make the claim, you assume the burden of proof. And now you're basically asking to go to trial. Take me further down the slippery slope, justice system, please, because I want to rely on the Constitution. I know this is, where's the law? Show me the law. Where's your jurisdiction? I'm a sovereign citizen. You don't control me. I admire those people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting them. I mean, before I found what I do now, I was going to go into court with something about common law and the Constitution. So it's just, they're just lacking the information. But that's why it works. Don't assume the burden.
It's just that it's that point where you go in assuming that their system, that they hold themselves to their own rules. If you go in there with that assumption, you go in there expecting that if you use their rules against them, that they'll somehow tie their own hands. And like literally, that's not how this government works. I mean, that's entirely that's what I've been screaming on this YouTube channel for years. Okay, so Landshark said a few things that might trigger some thoughts on your part, because these sound like more kind of traditional things that I hear when I bring this up. If you're traveling, don't admit to driving, then them presuming you driving is an opinion. Then you can have them prove you were driving, which they can't. I've heard this stuff before. And also Larry says, I am not the person. I am an agent that represents the corporation in the name of this person. Now, just before you respond, like, this shit makes me livid. Because it's like, it's exactly what I was just talking about. It's speaking words. It's trying to use their game against them, and then expecting them to care. When my entire point is they literally don't. What are your thoughts on that?
So these types of tactics rely on these words having specific definitions that are universally true, no matter who you're dealing with. And as we all know, cops fall all over the spectrum. They're not trained in law. They're not trained in legal terminology or matters, even though they're called law enforcement. And it's a roll of the dice. You don't know which cop is going to respect that or even recognize it or have ever heard of it before, okay? But if you want to know the true definitions of these legal terms according to them, and we don't have a problem using their dictionary, we just want to know, tell us where the goalposts are. We can beat you no matter where you put them, okay? It's called Black's Law Dictionary. In there, you'll find definitions for things like a driver. What's a driver? What's a resident? What does the word shall mean? What does a citizen? you can find out what they believe according to their rules these things are. And what you'll be shocked to discover is that they have virtually nothing to do with the common perception of those same words. So when they use like driver, I'm sorry, to me that's just using a voodoo spell. No, go look up on YouTube videos and go see all the videos where the people mentioned, hey, I have a right to travel, as it's known, this tactic, this right to travel, which is, it's totally true. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying it's not nearly as effective, and I only care about effective, because even if I could tell a lie,
like what I'm saying, like if they gave a shit about their own system, then some of this stuff would work a lot more often than it does. But the point is, they don't care. They're tyrants.
Of course.
We are in chains. That's the point. Yes. Yeah.
Of course. They've had decades to prove their point that it works, and they can't get it above the tiniest levels of success. So if I could go into court and lie, but be effective and get the charges dismissed, I would do that, because this is not a legitimate courtroom. It's a kangaroo court. That's not a judge. That's not a lawyer.
Point.
These are actors in costumes. You owe no honor to them. They're trying to extort you and ruin your life and use coercive threats of violence. I'll take your license. I'll take your livelihood. I'll take your freedom. I'll even take your life if you resist me effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Especially over nonviolent victimless crimes. And as you all know, like most, even crimes charged with victims are just as insane, because there's no due process. There's no presumption of innocence in actual reality. He's dying of eating that thing.
Oh man, I was like 100 degrees and my neck was hurting. Sorry, I missed what you were saying.
If only everyone who wore chains could take them off that easily throughout time, would be a nicer place.
Well, I said that I knew the right incantation and they just popped right off.
Yeah. Oh, no big deal. I don't want to discourage people who believe in that. I just want you to consider this. We as humans, myself included, obviously have flaws. And some of those flaws have to do with logic and deductive reasoning and logical fallacies. And confirmation bias is a phenomenon that can bite us in the ass harder than any other. It can cause more self-sabotage than most any other I can think of. And confirmation bias says, I want to keep believing in something that I've believed for 10, 20, 30 years, because if I'm wrong and I discover that today, I'll have to think that I was less than perfect or at best, or a fool at worst, all this time for believing something that wasn't as true or effective. I'm just asking people to please consider that possibility before just shutting it down and putting your fingers in your ears going, la, 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 la. I like my magic words, potions and constitution and common law and driver and the right to travel and sovereign citizens and all that stuff. All that stuff. That's the biggest hurdle.
If the system were legitimate, here's how it would go. Like, oh, we wrote you a citation to appear in court over a stop sign ticket. How do you plead? I didn't consent to that stop sign law. Oh, well, we have proof right here that you consented to it. You moved into your HOA, and it's part of your HOA contract that you signed before you were allowed to move into your HOA. You signed right here to agree to obey the traffic laws in this neighborhood. Yeah. So you agreed to that rule, and then you broke that rule. You also see right here on this piece of paper, you also agreed to the penalty for when you broke that rule, and you agreed that, you'd pay $150. So you did consent to it. Please pay up. Like in a just system, that's exactly how it would go. Or they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, we actually don't have proof of your consent or whatever on record. You're free to go. Like, that's justice.
Well, I would add I agreed, but I would add one more ingredient to that, and that would be, if it were actually a just system, that filing would also require the video footage from the cop car that shows that you ran through that stop sign egregiously. True. Not just, and that you had given consent previously, and the video evidence is absolute proof. Without that, it's just the cop's word against yours, and in my just system, the cop doesn't automatically get believed just because he's a cop.
I agree. Larry, again, thank you for all of your donations today. You say, Disenthrall, that's your signature on your driver's license. That's where I consented. That is, like, again, you're in my world now if we're going to talk ethics and philosophy, and here's how it works. If I don't get that stupid little card, I can be attacked on the road by Blue Line gang members and forcibly thrown in a cage for driving without their permission slip. That's called a threat. That means coercion. I am the victim of a threat. I am being coerced. That means if I act in defense of myself, in defense against that threat, by paying the thieves $35 and getting their stupid little card, I'm defending myself. That's not me consenting to either jack or shit. I've been told the driver's license is consent so many times. It literally is not. I do not consent. I would not have that card if I wasn't under threat. It is a defensive thing. That's it. So again, like, I appreciate your donations. That's why I'm spending time responding to you. The license, the same thing for taxes. Me signing a whatever 1040 whatever and filing taxes is not consent to neither jack or shit. It's me responding to being threatened if I don't. When you're responding to a threat, when you're defending yourself, that's not consent. It's like the lady that was ordered to sign the consent form. That doesn't make the consent form valid. That doesn't mean she consents to. That doesn't mean she actually consents to her kid getting vaccinated. That just means she was responding to a threat. That's all.
Yeah, those are obviously all excellent points. I just want to quick piggyback on some of that. So, Larry, my primary goal is to not change your mind or to say words that insult you or prove you wrong. That's not my goal here. My goal is to just, I'm speaking more to the independent fence sitters who may be listening and judging on what makes most sense to them, what they want to go with. So with that in mind, I would just challenge anybody who thinks that way, that the driver's license is consent, not only the points that you made, obviously, but go to your DMV and get a copy of a driver's license application. Okay, it's probably going to be longer than an 8.5 by 11 inch page. It's going to be flooded with small print. Okay, every time I look at one, in that small print, it gives away rights. Not only does it say you consent to all this, that, and the other, but it says, we want some additional constitution-breaking things, like you agree to, under certain situation, to have something searched and seized. You agree to consent to a breathalyzer test. They get more strict than their actual statutes and codes, right, in this whole document. So go look at the application. Just go look at the application, read all the fine print, and then see if that is anywhere close to voluntary. And again, like you mentioned, if you don't have it, you're going to get introduced to the endlessly escalating threat of violence until you bend the knee and comply and get the license. It's going to start out with a ticket. If you don't show up, it's an arrest warrant. If you do show up, you're either going to pay it or they're going to waste your time over and over and over and over and over while you have to miss work, right? If you get caught driving again, they could steal your car. Now you can go to prison. Now you can use your job, your license, your relationship. So it starts out small, but it always ends up big, and their justification is a form of pragmatism, which is the opposite of ethics. Their justification is, if we don't set it up this way, people won't pay their speeding tickets because they won't have to, and then people will speed. And it's like, I'm sorry, we already have laws for when people drive recklessly and cause wrecks, right? We already have total, like if somebody's drunk and they're weaving all over the road, guaranteed somebody's going to call 911 on them. And they're going to get stopped, and they should be taken off the road. They're reckless, and they're endangering others, and it could really hurt somebody. But the implementation of nonviolent victimless criminal charges is where we really draw the line on this is some bullshit. That's what I had to say about that.
All right, continuing on through the comments, Larry says, your primary goal is to state things that are factually incorrect and likely get them put in jail for contempt of court. Are you talking to me? Are you saying my goal is to get people put in jail for contempt of court? Like, are you saying my goal is to like lie to people right now? Are you serious? Like, well, thanks for your donations, bud. Like, are you the guy that like several months ago we had a conversation along these lines on one of the streams, and somebody got butthurt, and like there's a single downvote on most of my videos now from that guy? Like, is that you or is this somebody else? I just want to make sure. Sovereign Dirt says, has Mark Stevens received any credit for the source material?
If not, here it is now. All right, I got no problem crediting Mark Stevens, but he wasn't the only one who contributed to this. Okay, the guy that taught me how to do all this was a huge player in that. It was actually a conglomeration of ideas and trial and error. A lot of the script was designed on people going to court and getting screwed over on consistently, so we made an alteration and threw it in, and what's evolved out of that is something that's damn near untouchable. If it could get any better, we would make it better. But this has just been kicking everybody's butt. So, and then further, I just want to mention about the contempt, because we didn't talk about this at all, and I'll make this super quick. We go to great lengths to prepare people on how to know exactly where that line is of when you will and will not be tossed in jail and how to dodge it. We know exactly where that line is. I have only been in contempt of court one time, and I've been giving judges shit for dozens of hearings. I've yelled at them, called them by their first name multiple times. I've given them every reason to do it, but I always knew where the line was. And anyone else can too, really, if they get good at it. I only got held in contempt because I knew I was risking it. And I judged it. What she did was so egregious that I knew it would look really good for me if she did throw me in a cage for 4 hours. And that's exactly what happened. So it was to my advantage overall in the long term. And I got all those charges kicked out. That day, the contempt and the charge I was there for originally, all dismissed. So I just wanted, my overall point was, believe me, buddy, we address that because it's your risk, you're taking it. If one of my peeps gets thrown in jail for contempt, I sleep like a baby at night because I warned them fully. You don't want to take the risk? Don't play the game. So simple. This isn't for everybody.
Larry, I apologize if you're not the person I was talking about. Forgive me, I was directing my anger at this past person. He says that he wasn't saying I was trying to lie to people. He says that the frog was trying to lie to people.
Okay.
If you have anything to say on that, otherwise I'll keep reading.
I'd have to get more specific. Like,
Phobes donates $5 and says,
Larry?
"What flavor of boots do you prefer, Larry?" Okay, getting spicy with the donations.
Believe me, I have attracted a horde of critics. And we're talking online, hardcore, doxing-seeking, insulting, trolling mass of critics. And, some of them seem to find me anywhere. It's just, it's an unavoidable thing. You get people who are either cops or they have loved ones that are cops, lawyers, judges. They're just so invested in the system that any attack upon it is like an attack upon their very psychological identity. And they're just NPC level thinking. No amount of logic or ethics or reason is going to break through that barrier. So I just kind of not try. And I live fine with it because to be that way is its own punishment. I don't need to engage with them and try and prove them wrong. It's thinking that way, that unprincipled way of might makes right, is its own punishment. You're just going to get that portion. It happens all the time.
Yeah, Larry, you said something I agree with. You said their line for contempt is wherever the judge decides. Yeah,
100%.
That's why the system 100%. Is invalid. That's why we're trying to get rid of this government, because it's not based on consent. It's not based on any kind of objective ethical structure of consensual governance. It's just whatever the judge decides. That's the problem, and I agree with you. You nailed it. And then GL Cap says the line for contempt is wherever the judge decides that he can get away with politically. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Are you in on this? G.
What?
Never mind. I got my friend in the room. I think that might be him. Are you commenting on this? Oh yeah, he is. That is him. That's my buddy sitting right next to me, GL Cap. All right, but anyway, so regarding that, you can be thrown in jail for whatever the judge wants. True. However, based upon the role play that was actually pretty dang close to what could actually happen in reality that you just saw displayed here.
Well, that's promising.
What judge would be like, "Hey, Mr. X, I'm holding you in contempt of court with no warning, by the way. Deputy, take him into custody." Based on how respectful and non-interrupting and just polite you were. If the judge were to do this and they know this, the public would be aghast. They would be like, "What?" And so if they want to throw you in jail, they're going to try and manipulate you. They're going to try to troll you, trigger you. They're going to try to get you to shoot yourself in the foot by displaying behavior that is contempt worthy. But very, 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 very rarely will they just, with no warning, throw you in a cage. So it's totally avoidable, is my point.
There's two, again, very valid comments from Jim, Jesus, and Larry that I'll get to right after I read this. But, I didn't even get to in our role play, I didn't even get to the spicy fun parts of my notes. When the judge, threatens to throw me, in jail for contempt if I say another word, then you just, kind of be quiet and you wait for him to ask you a question and you're like, Is it safe to speak?
No.
And then you play it up to the audience, like, are you nuts? You just threatened me with jail for asking a question. So I don't know really what I can and can't say in this court that won't end up with you having me attacked and caged. You're a fair judge. You wouldn't ever throw someone in jail for asking a polite question, would you? Like, these notes are, like, when I read these notes, I was reading them before the show, like, quietly to myself, and I just started chuckling. Like, my note for if the judge starts yelling is like, the judge is like, rah, 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 and then you say, Judge, you're yelling at me. Are you okay? Do we need to take a break and give you some time to calm down?
Yeah, I remember that one.
This is good stuff. I love it.
And keep in mind that not all hearings are recorded with video and or audio, but all of them at a certain level will have transcripts. Now, if a judge is yelling and screaming at you, he's trying to apply pressure that they will not have show up on a transcript. It's not like they're going to put his words all in caps with an exclamation point at the end. They don't want the judge to appear like he's yelling. So that's why we bring up that type of response, is so that on the transcript, and believe me, this is not the only example. We manipulate them too, because this is just a written word a lot of times for a reason, is to make sure that it gets out on the transcript. Judge, you're yelling at me. Why are you doing that? Do we need to take a break? It affirms to the public that you're the calm one, you're the chill one under pressure, you're rational, you're confident, and therefore far more believable and persuasive than a judge who's losing his cool and his temper under pressure.
Sure, especially if there's a lot of people in the room. It's probably different if you're like the only one left, and I bet they try and save you till the end if they detect that you're going to be a problem.
Right. They do. Oh, that's a given. That's a given. You'll be at the end, so the room is empty, and that's where the recording and the internet come into play. I also wanted to briefly touch on what you said about the remaining silent. So, any courtroom will consider a defendant who remains silent losing, and the state winning. So they're perfectly fine with someone who remains silent. Well, let's say a judge gives you the warning: if you don't do this X, or if you do this X, say one more word, I'm going to hold you in contempt. Then we go totally silent. Don't say another word. They're going to speak, because this hearing isn't over and he has loose ends to tie up. So he's going to say something, and we still don't say a damn word. We just stare him in the face until he says something that's so obvious he wants a response from you. He's asking for a response for you. Whatever he asks for, we only respond with, is it safe to speak? And if it were me, I'd be making direct eye contact with this guy the whole time and not blinking, because the public behind you doesn't see that. But you can send a message how unafraid of you I am and your threat of a jail cell. Is it safe to speak? He's not going to say no. He's going to say, I just asked you a question. Of course it's safe to speak. Well, Judge, I don't want to be thrown in a cage for asking for one clarification from the prosecution.
You civilized, fair, and balanced person, you.
Right? Now, another tool is to, like, you can laugh, but not openly. Because if you openly laugh, you're disrespectful, I'm going to threaten you. And so you laugh, but then hide it. If a crack of a laugh comes out, but then you obviously hide it, that's allowed, because you're making an effort to suppress it. But the public, believe me, they know. If this guy's so confident that he's laughing, he's been successful in the past. He must know what he's doing. What does he know that I don't? Anyway, we're very careful about contempt.
The two valid comments, one from Jim Jesus was, but isn't that a good reason? So, like, this is about what we were talking about, where the judge can just hold you in contempt literally whenever he wants because this law system is actually invalid. He says, but isn't that a good reason not to try this? Wouldn't you do better activism not in a jail cell, he says. And do you want to answer that first? Yeah.
So most contempts of court are just going to be that day. They basically send you to your room for a couple hours. And then at the end of the business day, they pull you out. You're the last hearing. And if you say the right words, they'll let you go. Nine times out of 10, that'll be the case. If you've done something really stupid, egregious, like gone way off script and be like, I'm going to kill you, motherfucker, or something like that, then you're not doing what I'm suggesting. Okay. And then further, for someone to go, hey, you're suggesting you go into court and do this and you're risking arrest. I just said at the beginning, then don't do it. I'm not suggesting that everyone should do this. I'm suggesting that everyone should know how to do this. If you know how to do this, then you know what's behind the magic curtain. And even if you do have to go, and let's say you got a wife and kids and you can't afford this, you got a job and responsibilities, you can't afford to come back, they're going to waste your time hearing after hearing. Fine. You can still go in there and say words that if your kids were in the audience, you'd be proud of, that they'd know what kind of father they have, and that you recognize that this system is just based on coercive threats of violence, and because of reasons, factors, and families and career and everything, you have no choice but to pay the fine. You don't have to give your signature on a guilty plea to do that. You don't have to sign anything. I never sign anything, and I don't get any additional consequences for it. So, but and then the side benefit is, again, like I mentioned, all aspects of life outside of a courtroom, you will have the advantage on, because you're relying upon the truth, logic, ethics, reasons, and you know how to use clarifications to point out other people's inconsistencies at best and bullshit lies at worst.
So my answer. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just said it's a huge advantage in life, and then I ended.
I agree. My answer is that, look, it might not be your method of activism. It might not be appropriate for you. What's a good example? Kokesh cocked a shotgun in Washington, D.C. and got his house raided and thrown in jail for a year. While he was in jail for a year, he was basically non-existent and probably doing less than nothing good in terms of activism for the world. That's not a cost-benefit equation that I would have run and be like, let me go cock a shotgun in Washington, D.C. Right. But was he wrong to do that? It's his life. He wasn't ethically hurting anybody. He wasn't, violating the NAP or whatever, so, I guess you do you, and you do your activism in the ways in which you're good at it. And if somebody finds themselves good at, I would love to see videos of people in courtroom using this. It would just be I'd watch that instead of Star Trek at night, just for my entertainment. That'd be great. And they'd probably make some good money. I might try that on this channel just a little bit for fun. We'll see. I've got some tickets. Again,
all good points that you make. I wouldn't suggest that everybody go in and do this. It just so happens. Look, we're all different types of people. It just so happens that I'm the type of person where I am not going to let another human being steal my shit and play me the fool. I'm not going to bend the knee. I'm just not going to I have a license. I carry insurance. I have registration, because I can't apply enough public pressure with those tickets to get the power that I need. But if you raid my house over cannabis plants, I am going to fuck you up. One of us is going to get fucked up, and it's not going to be me. And that's just the way I am. I don't have a choice in the matter. I was just naturally motivated to do everything possible to beat these people, and that's how this came about. But if you're not that type, please play to your strengths. If you don't want to go to court and risk this, please don't. If you're effective at convincing sheep with other forms of activism, do that. I'm on the same team as you. Don't do it. Not everybody can pull this off. Very few people can actually pull this off. Based on my experience, I'd say it's somewhere around 10 to 20% of the people who want to and have the balls to try actually are effective in court. You have to have a higher than average running CPU. You have to be cool under pressure and comfortable speaking in public. You have to have a lifestyle that is not very coercible, where you can come to hearing after hearing after hearing. You have to be willing to put stuff on YouTube. You have to be willing to be okay with going to jail. You have to be willing to play the metagame, reading body language. You have to not be afraid of them and their consequences, because the sooner they find out that you are ultimately not afraid of them, they will quit. It's not worth it. If you're effective enough at convincing enough people and exposing them for the hypocrites and domestic terrorists that they are, you win. That's just me. That doesn't have to be anybody.
Larry said they can just file a plea on your behalf or whatever and move on.
Absolutely, and I know every which way under the sun how to deal with that too. First off,
give us one.
I would say half. Okay, so half of people who go in, that's the end result. And you're refusing to enter a plea, so I'm going to enter a plea on your behalf. Now, those people have they haven't performed well, and they're either stuttering or not saying anything at all, or they're saying the wrong things, or they're missing opportunities when they could have jumped in effectively. But basically, entering a plea on my behalf, Judge, are you trying to be my lawyer? I've said from the beginning, I intend to plead guilty here today. Can I still plead guilty right now? Now that dangles a carrot in front of them, because they love for you to plead guilty. And when you say, can I please plead guilty right now? They think, oh my gosh, he's about to plead guilty and I'm about to win. So they go off of that threat, and then, yes, you can. Okay, well, I'd like to make an informed plea of guilty. Does this court allow uninformed pleas of guilty? He's going to say, no, it doesn't. You have the right to be informed.
Does this court require uninformed?
Right.
Do I not have a right to be informed? Yeah, I see.
great, because I have all the documents I need to plead guilty except the one. And I just need a copy of whatever the prosecutors provided regarding the element of jurisdiction, and I'm out of here. Why is this taking so long? And why are you threatening me with a plea of not guilty? That are not my intentions at all. You're not my lawyer, are you? And with the yes or no question, catch 22 at all times. Don't just hand over the microphone. So that's one of many attempts you could do to counter that. Will they do it sometimes? Yes, but I guarantee you every time that's actually happened, the guy wasn't putting in an A performance. It might have been a B level, but it wasn't an A. Because if you do what I tell you, the chances of that happening are very unlikely. And even if it does, no problem. We file a motion to vacate the plea. It's a very common motion, vacate the plea. And you articulate why, and you put it to a higher judge, a different judge. Hey, this is why. Look at this crazy stuff this judge said. Obviously, this plea he entered is not just because of reasons X, Y, and Z. And the whole time you're applying public and political pressure along the way. Judges, when they know you're capable of applying this, they know you know how to write a motion. They know you know how to appeal to higher judges, their bosses. They know you know how to file a formal complaint with the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. They know you know how to put this stuff on YouTube and make by their first full name so that they're searchable. A judge's full name is searchable on YouTube, and then their family and friends and colleagues and everyone else gets to find out the kind of bullshit they're actually pulling in court, this quote-unquote honorable judge. It's a total package of pressure you put on them. They go, this ain't worth no $250 ticket. Dismiss these charges, prosecutor. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Right. All right. Last call for questions and comments, and then we will probably call it. And while we're waiting on that, I will thank you for taking the time. Like, you're one of the few people that actually take the time to go out of their way to create environments to teach people things that you think will make the world a better place. Not many people do that. And you are one of them, so thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time to come on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I don't really deserve any thanks. I'm just naturally inclined to do this, and I enjoy it. It's kind of like therapy to me, and by doing it, it stays very fresh in my mind. If I weren't doing it for 2 years, I would get rusty. I am not comfortable with getting rusty in this in the slightest, because I could get a ticket for anything and have to go to court tomorrow. Any one of us could. So it's my pleasure. So
I guess what we might do is why don't we end the stream here, and Ethics, would you like to drop in the Disenthrall Discord server and talk to some of the people that have been hanging out in this video and maybe continue the conversation for a while?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, if they want to go, when we're done with this fully, I would even be willing to go voice there if they want to do that.
Okay,
but text is fine too.
What I'm thinking is I'll end the stream because we're almost at an hour and a half. Thanks everybody for watching. Big thanks for the people that donated. I really appreciate that very much. We'll keep the recording going, and then you and I can, while the recording's running, we could join Discord and just chat with people.
Oh, okay.
That way we can have the best of both worlds. Like, if it turns out being really good, we'll have it recorded, and people can hang out in Discord. Does that sound good?
Heck yeah. Cool.
All right. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching the stream, and I will catch you next time. Join us on Discord. Oh, I'll count to 10 here. The link to our Discord is on the screen at the top there. It's also, if you follow the link in the description to disenthrall.me/platforms, there's a Discord invite link there if you're not a member of the Disenthrall Discord server. The Disenthrall Discord server is an activist server towards voluntarism. The purpose of this server is to expose people to the ideas of ethics, philosophy, the non-aggression principle, and voluntarism. It is not a drama server. It's not for, the stupidity that happens on a lot of Discord servers. It's a bunch of friends and really good, genuine people that enjoy having good talks. So if that's your thing, drop by our Discord server, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.
Right on.